Hello everybody and welcome to this video. In this video we're going to talk about spreadsheets, and as usual I made a checklist which is based on the syllabus of 9626, and it's for 2022, 2023 and 2024. If you're already on syllabus 2025, 2026 and 2027, it's going to work for that one too. It's almost exactly the same. Note that this is version 2 of the syllabus. To walk us through the syllabus, I made a bunch of exercises which you can download from the link in the description. Also, remember this is just an overview video which covers everything, but just getting an overview of everything is not enough to get you ready for the exam. You need to practice. Okay, let's start at the start. Create page screen structure. This is all about really what it's going to look like when we print out our spreadsheet. It's kind of funny to start with this, but let's just do it in the order that it occurs in the syllabus. Here I have an example spreadsheet, and it has some data on it, and when we print it out, we can go to File, Print, and I'm not really connected to a printer, so I'm going to print a PDF to see what it looks like. But we don't need to, because here on the right hand side we already get a print preview. And as you can see, we're going to have 3 pages, and it kind of looks weird because it has one column over here on the next page, and here we have an example solution. We probably don't want to include that at all. So let's go and change the setup of this print. To do that, let's go to page layout and let's set the orientation to a landscape. We can also change the print area. To do that, we just select the area we want to print. We only want to print this area. And then we go to print area, set print area. If we go to view, page break view, we can get a preview of the area which is going to be printed. So we cover page orientation. Let's have a look at margins, header and footer. If we go to page layout, we can set the margins over here. Notice how everything is in centimeters. You might not have everything in centimeters. If you're on Windows, you can easily change it by going to settings and then searching for country. Change your country or region. And over here, regional format should be English UK. Since Cambridge is based in England, I hope that this is the best setting. And I hope they won't ask for inches and stuff like that on the exam. But if they do, you can always go to settings, search for country, and change it over here. Okay, next we have print breaks. It's not actually in the syllabus, but if I want to add 2 pages, I can add a print break. If I want to split it up over 2 pages, we can insert the page break over here. And now we have 2 pages. And I'm going to remove it. Print area. No. What's next? It's margins. We set the margins. We have normal margins. We can set them to wide and narrow, or we can set our own margins. Okay, so let's set the margin. So let's set the header. Or incidentally, once we're on page layout, we click down on these arrows next to page setup, and we get the dialog where we can also set the portrait and landscape if we want. In fact, we can find margins as well here. We can find most things here. Down here, we can set the page size. We can also set the header and the footer over here. And we can pick a standard header, which includes a page number, or we can just do a custom header. And in the custom header, we can type what we want on the left, and we can type what we want on the right, and we can even include, or in the center, and we can even include fields like page number. So that's page number 1 out of how many pages. The date, let's include the date on the left hand side. And all sorts of stuff. We can do the same thing with the footer. Let's go to print preview. And as you can see on the top, we have the date, some text, and the number of and the which page number. So let's see. That covers page size, margin, header, footer. What about fit to page? Fit to page is in the same dialog. Here we have scaling. It's going to increase or decrease the text depending relative to the font size it is here. So right now I'm just going to print it in the given font size, but maybe I want to enlarge it or decrease it in size so that it can fit better. We can use adjust 100%, or we can even do fit, and then we have one page wide and one page tall. So that covers fit to page. Next, let's talk about inserting cells, rows, and comments. And let's go back to the regular view, normal view. Here we have a number of rows and columns. If we want to insert, you just click on one, right click, and insert. And like that, you can easily insert a new column. Or you can insert multiple columns by holding down Shift, selecting them, and then where you want to insert them, and just insert. And it's the exact same thing with rows. To delete columns, you just select it, or as many as you want to delete, and you just right click, delete. Easy. Resizing columns and merging columns. You can resize like this. Same with rows. Or you can set a precise height by right clicking on it and going to row height. And then you can just set an exact value. For example, 10. I'm going to just Control Z that. Y. Okay. We also have merge. If you select multiple cells under home, merge and center. It combines cells into one. Okay, cell protection. By the way, if you cannot find anything, you can always search for it up here. For example, protect sheet. A whole bunch of suggested actions come up. But I may as well just tell you where it is. It's in File, Info. But if you cannot find it, or if you forget on the exam, just use the search in the top. It's easier. So File, Info, Protect Workbook. Protecting is very useful when it comes to people accidentally making mistakes. So we have a whole bunch of protection options. First of all, we can always open in read only. That minimizes a lot of accidental changes. We can also encrypt it so that you need the password to be able to read the document in the first place. And we can even protect specific sheets. And if we want, we can protect the workbook structure. That means you cannot add and remove sheets. So let's click on, what if I want to protect most of the document, but a few of the cells we want to make sure that uh, the users, anybody can edit it. For that, we first need to go to those particular cells which we want the user to be able to edit, and we want to give these cells a special property. So we right click on the cell we want to give a special property, go to Format Cells, and here we have a bunch of tabs. We're going to go over all these tabs later, but the one we need right now is protection cell, and we have locked. That means when I protect the sheet, it gets locked. But this is the exception. I want to not lock this cell, so I'm going to unselect this and click on OK. You can do the same thing with entire columns if you want, or entire rows, or even a whole region. Let's say I want anybody to be able to edit these parts. Right click, format cells, like this. Okay. Okay. And then we go to file info, or we do like here, protect sheet. The password can be empty, or we can actually include a password. If the password is empty, just allow anybody to change it, but they have to think twice. These are what you're allowed to do when it's locked. So we're still allowed to select the cells, but we cannot do any of this like format and stuff. And now we select, but if I try to change, it says, sorry, it's protected. But remember, I unlocked this one. So let's see. This one we're allowed to change. And really, that's all there is to it. I forgot. We want to unprotect the sheet. We want to unlock the sheet. Now it's unlocked again. It's that easy. Okay. Checklist time. Protect cells, protect rows, columns, worksheets, workbook. That's it. Next, we're going to talk about format. Okay. We're going to do this exercise and this exercise, and then we're going to start checking stuff off our checklist. Basically, we want to make this look like this. So, first of all, we're going to select this whole part. Excuse me. Going to set the fill to be in home, set the fill to white. Then we've got all of these which need to be in bold. Control B. Control B. You can also find it up here, by the way, if you don't want to use Control B. Control B. Control B. These also need to be in bold. And this needs to be in bold. We also want this to be underlined, Control U, which you can find up here. Next, we want table to be merged. And we also want it to be, the text to be rotated. Format cells, alignment. You can find most of this stuff under format cells, and you can also find it up here. It's quite easy, really. Oh, and we want the alignment to be like so, and in the bottom, right. We also need to increase the size of this column. Let's add some borders. Where are the borders? The borders are here. Borders. Borders. Anything else? Yeah, dates. These are dates. Here it's number, not a general number, but a date format, like so. And we want to center align everything. And these should have 2 decimal points, all of them. So we'll do 2, like so. Easy. Next, we have, is there an example here? No. Set the format of cell 3 as percentage. G5 to P14 should be currency values. Currency, but we want it in euros. So let's put it to currency. Now it's in pounds, but we're going to be more specific and click on more number formats. And here we have a whole bunch of different options. Click on custom and we can see like the kind of code we want. EUR. Or if you have the euro symbol somewhere on your computer, here we have the euro symbol. Let's just take this one and Control C and then go all the way up again to pounds. Delete that. Control V. Okay. Euros. Let's put it like that. Okay, next. We also want them all the way up to here. So let's put some 110, 0, 1. Let me just show you that we can actually use this formatting brush to paint the format. It just copies the format over there. Okay. Okay, this is not really to do with formatting, so we're going to skip it. So let's see does what we did that. Set the formatting of cells appropriate. We learned about dates. We didn't learn about time, text, numeric, currency, percentage, fraction. We didn't learn text orientation, alignment we learned, merge we learned, shading we learned, borders we learned. Okay, let's go through those ones which we haven't covered yet. Time. Date and time is just the same. Here I put in the current time value. And if I want to change the format, we can go over here and we can just put it as a number value. Or we can put it as a time value. Or if we want a very specific time value, we can go to one of these. Or we can go to custom and look at how they did it for other kind of custom examples and make our own. HHH double dot MMSS. Okay, what's next? Fractions. Let's say equals 1 divided by 2. Let's see if we can express it as a fraction. Right click, format cells, fraction. Easy. Cell formatting, size, style, and color. This is also pretty easy. We've already seen how to set the background color and the font color. The font size, font italics is here too, by the way. We can increase and decrease as well the size. Next, comments. Comments are very useful because we can just say this is interesting. And other people will be able to reply to our comments, and we can now edit our comments up here, etc. And we have delete thread and resolve thread. Okay. Conditional formatting. For conditional formatting, I have another sheet, which is this one. In conditional formatting, the format depends on the value of the cell. So for example, let's highlight all grades with a score of less than 50%. Let's just select these values and we're going to go to conditional formatting. And the top one is the easiest to do. We want everything to highlight in red, everything that's less than 50%. Okay. And now we want to add an additional formatting. We're going to highlight in green everybody that got more than 80%. Quite useful. Let's have a look at the rules we've already set up. We set up 2 rules. We can click on Manage Rules. And we see that here we have 2 simple rules. If I want to remove all the rules in the sheet, make sure you have everything shown here and delete the rules. We can also do something like this, where we use color scales. We can also do it not with color scales, but with data bars, like this. Or instead of using data bars, we do icon sets. Here we go. that's the easy part about conditional formatting, but we can also set up more advanced rules. Let's select the area which we want to highlight. We want to highlight this number. We go to conditional formatting, and these are all the easy ones, but let's make a new one which is a bit more advanced. And basically when we get here, we can just ignore all of these because anything you need to do, you can do using a formula. Let's say we want to say we want the current cell. We don't want the current cell. We want B2 to be less than or equal to the expiration date, which is here. First equals. Always start with equals. Then B2 smaller than the expiration date, E1. If this function is true, if this equation returns true, we're going to use this format. So let's set it at green, fill green. And let's click on OK. And you see it works. But we only have it for this thing. Let's do it for all of these. So let's select the cell, format painter, and paint the format. And as you can see, it doesn't work. So why is that? Let's go to the conditional formatting and go to manage rules and inspect this rule. We haven't learned about it yet, but we need to use a dollar sign. What we need to do is we need to use a dollar signs. And technically, we haven't really learned about the dollar signs yet, but we're going to learn more about it in formulas. But for now, this function is valid for this cell. A2 is looking at cell B2 and it's comparing it to cell E1. But when we copied it down, all these cell references copied down with it. So in other words, A3 is looking at the value of B3 and it's comparing it to E2. A4 is looking at the value of B4 and it's comparing it to the value in E3. So in order to prevent that from happening, what we need to do is we need to put a dollar sign in front of the 1. When we put a dollar sign in front of the 1, it's not going to shift down the row. Let's see if it works like this. Now it works. It's confusing, I know. But don't worry. We're going to practice this with the dollar sign more when we study functions. Okay, let's extend this function so that it doesn't only influence the formatting in column A, but it also influences the format in column B. We're going to take this brush and we're going to format it and we're going to apply it to this column 2. But we'll go back to date. Let's put it like this, And let's go to manage rules. And now we have a new formula has been created. Let's edit this rule. And we say we want the value in B2. And in E1. We're going to put a dollar sign in front of the E as well. And let's apply. Okay. Let's do the same thing, but now we're going to say if it's past the expiration date. If it's past the expiration date, it has to be colored red. Conditional format, we select both columns this time. New rule, use a formula. We always start with equal, and we're interested in B2 as a start. We want to fix the column so that the column never changes. So we're going to put a dollar in front of the column if B2 is larger than, and then we want to compare it with E1, and we're going to fix both the column and the row because neither the column nor the row changes. $1. Format, in this case, it's going to be red. Keep your fingers crossed. Okay. There's a problem. That's supposed to be 1, not an exclamation mark. It seems to work. Let's do it one more time to get good practice. New rule. Use the formula. Equals B2, but we're going to fix the column. Oh. Is equal to, we can also click here directly, and in this case it's gonna be orange. Cross your fingers. It works. It's a tricky one, you need some practice to get used to it. But I'm gonna move on. Next, we're going to talk about basic formulas and functions. So let's go. First of all, let's use the min function. Functions are very easy. You just have to use write equals, and then we use a cell value, for example, this one, and then we can do plus that, and we get a solution. We can copy them down, and as I copy them down, the references also follow along. This is called relative addressing. If I don't want the cells to follow along, I can just press F4 to add dollar signs. So as you can see, the blue one is going to follow along and the red one is going to stay fixed because I added dollar signs. The blue one followed along and the red one stayed fixed. We can do that not only with rows but also with columns. Both the row and the column stay fixed because I added a dollar in front of the column letter and also the row number. But if I want only the column to stay fixed and not the row, I can just add a dollar sign in front of just that. Here, let me show you. Delete this and this. Now I'm going to make sure that the column stays fixed. So I'm going to press F4 and then F4 again and then F4 again until the dollar is in front of the column letter. And now when we copy to the right, we see that it stays fixed, the red one. But when I copy down, it's going to move along as I fix it. This is the difference between relative and absolute. The column stays fixed no matter what, but because I don't have a dollar sign in front of the row, it's going to follow along. So in this case, the addressing is absolute for the column letter, but it's relative for the row number. We don't only have the plus, but we have all the functions. We have 4 plus 5, 3. We have 5 multiplied by. For multiplied by, you have to use a star, multiplied by 2. So to use, we have divide by, I don't know, pick a random number, 10 divided by 2. We have subtract. Easy, right? These are your regular mathematical expressions. We also have to the power of 4 to the power of 5. Okay, these are your regular mathematical expressions. We also have functions. To do a function, you just do equals, and in this case, we want the min function. Do equals and you start typing, and all the functions will appear below. We have min, which is short for minimum. Functions will have an input, in this case, or a parameter. In this case, we have a number as a parameter, or we can have a whole row, or we can have multiple numbers. Let's use comma, and it's going to return the minimum of these 3 cell values, which is 2. If you, we can also do it like this. But holding down Control, Shift, and the down arrow to select the whole range. And we have the minimum of the whole range. Same for maximum, it's easy. Now we have VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP is a bit more complicated. VLOOKUP, we have a table and we want to look up a value from the table. And VLOOKUP, V stands for vertical. In this case, we know the name of who we want to look up. So we're looking up the row. And we want grade. If we are doing HLOOKUP, it means we will know which column we want to look up. H stands for horizontal. And we would specify which row we're looking in. Okay, let's do this example. Hopefully it'll be a bit more clear. It's the same as always, equals V look up. Just press tab to autocomplete it. And then equals. We want the lookup value. The lookup value in this case is Lars. We're looking up Lars. Next we have the table array. So this is our whole table. And after the table array, we'll need the column index number. This is the first column and this is the second column. So we're looking in the second column. Finally, we want the range lookup. If it's false, we're looking for an exact value. And we're looking for an exact, oh look, this is what I put an extra equals over here. Okay, lookup value, table array, column index, false. If we don't know, it's going to give us a help. In this case, we're looking for an exact match. We're looking for exactly Lars. So we're going to type false. Close brackets. As you can see, we have a grade of 7. We don't have to type an exact literal value here. We can also reference a cell. Okay, to pass, each student needs a grade of at least 5 and needs to be absent no more than 5 times. We can use an if function with yes and no. Is the grade high enough? we're going to do equals if. Then we need the logical test. Grade larger than 5, comma, what should I say do if it is high enough? Yes. What should I do if it's not high enough? No. Enter. And we can just copy it down. And it's always high enough. What if class had a grade of 4? Then it would be no. Is the student present often enough? The student should be absent no more than 5 times. And here's the number of times absent. So let's see. Equals if present often enough, if the absenteeism is greater than 5, then we're going to say no, the student was not present often enough. Now we want to figure out if the student passes or fails. And for the student to pass, both of these should be yes. So we're going to use an AND function. If this equals AND, this is equal to yes, and this is equal to yes. We're going to combine them. And if they're both yes, we're going to end up with a value of true. Oh, there's a typo. I missed out this second quotation mark. And if it's not, if at least one of them is no, it's going to return false. So let's combine this with an if. If all of this ends up in true, then we're going to say pass. Otherwise, failed. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about named ranges. So up here, you may have noticed that we have cell values, but we can name the cell values instead of A7 or whatever to tax rate to give it a special name. So I'm going to go over here and we're just going to write tax rate. Now this cell has the name not B9. It still has the name B9, but it also has the name value. Fill out cell C12 as B12 multiplied by tax rate equals B12 multiplied by tax rate. And you see it automatically fills it out. We're going to copy the sum down. And we see we didn't even need to worry about adding dollar signs. Okay, we can also name a whole range. If you select the whole range and name it taxes. And now we don't need to, now we can say simply sum. Sum just means add up everything inside a certain range. And I already specified this range to be called taxes. Okay, exercise. You should be able to do these exercises yourself now, but to save time, I'm going to skip them. But here we have another function we might be interesting, which we can do average. We want to calculate the average, open brackets, or we could have done like this, values euro, in which case we just type value 0. Okay, moving on to text functions. Excuse me. We can combine text using the AND symbol. So here we have two text, two cells, and we've combined them using the AND value. We're going to combine this value with this value to end up with a serial number. Equals, and that. And we're going to scroll down, and that's easy. Okay, we also have a bunch of functions like left, right, mid. Let's use left to get the first 8 sentences, the first 8 letters of the sentence. Equals left, open brackets. The text we want is in here, and we want the first 8 letters. My uncle. We can also do the exact same thing using right. But instead of getting the leftmost letters, we get the rightmost letters. How about we use mid to get some letters in between? In this case, we specify the first letter we want to get and how long a text we want. That's starting from the 15th letter, and we want it to be 4 letters long. Fish. We can also use upper to make everything into uppercase. Or we can use lower to convert everything into lowercase. And we can also use find. Find does what? B22. We had a word there. Let me Control Z. Control Z, Control Z. Fishing. I'm going to find out where in that sentence we have the word fishing. So here we have find, open brackets. Sentence, that one. Excuse me, I'm mixing it up. We're going to find this text in this sentence. It's in letter 15. That's where it starts. Okay, text to numbers and numbers to text. Following numbers have been input as text. And when we try to use an average function on them, it says error. So we want to use value to convert these text values into number values. There we go. And we can do the same thing with int, but you should be aware that int stands for integer, and int is a whole number, so it's not going to work for real numbers, for values like 6.5. It's only going to work for whole numbers. In fact, if we have a value like 7, I don't know, 0.6, and we use int on it, it's going to round it up. It's going to round it down, excuse me. Next, let's talk about date and time functions. Here we have a date and time value. We can get the day of the month using the day function. We can get the months using the month function. We can get the year using the year function. We can get the hour using the hour function. it's not, you don't exactly need to be Einstein to figure out how these functions work. We can get the minute using the minute function. Remember, it's one thing to watch me do this. It's another thing to be able to calculate with it. So now I'm giving you an overview and I'm trying to be as fast as possible. However, you're going to need to practice it too. Okay, weekday. Weekday returns a number from 1 to 7. Turns out that the 12th of March is the 6th day of the week. Let's see what that corresponds to. 12th of March 2021. It's a Friday. That means Sunday is the first day of the week according to Excel. Monday is the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth day, and Saturday, according to Excel, is the seventh day of the week. Okay, we can use the date to make a date value from. If we have month, day, and year values, we can use the function date to make a date value. Equals date, open brackets. We have to put in the year first, and then the month, and then the day. Close brackets. Same for time. Hour, minute, second. What about what time is it now? No problem, we just use the now function. What weekday is it now? We're going to combine two functions. We're going to do weekday, open brackets. I'm going to put a function inside this function, now. Function inside a function, nested function. Use weekday to complete column B. Equals weekday. We want to use conditional formatting. This is a little revision to highlight the weekends. Less than 2, highlighted green. I'm going to add another one. Greater than 6. We'll also highlight it green. And there's your weekend days. Saturday and Sunday. Conditional functions. If, we've already talked about if B11 is greater than 50% pass, otherwise fail. Let's fill out column C. I will skip this one because it's quite easy. We can also have functions like count if. Count if. Got the range which we want to add up. And then we have the condition. It's greater than 2. So it's only going to add up 3. Why? Oh, we're gonna count. Sorry, it's not summing them up. It's just counting them up. So 6 of these values are greater than 2, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's correct. The same is for SUMIF. So we're only going to sum them up if it's greater than 2. Or average if it's exactly the same thing. And here we have an example. List of grades for both Peter and Paul. We use average if to calculate Paul's grades. Average if. Got our range over here. This is the range that contains the criteria. This is the criteria, or in other words, the condition. And we want this to be equal to Paul. And now we want to calculate the range which uses which calculates the average, but only for those cells where the condition is true. And we have 71%, 60, 72, 69. That makes sense. Okay, let's work through these exercises. We're going to count if. Use count if to calculate how many times the homework has been late for all students. Count if. Use SUMIF to add up the total number of exercises Jane has done. This is the range where we're going to check our criteria. And this is our criteria. And this is the range we're going to sum up. 7. So Jane has done 7. 1, 2, 3, 7. Perfect. Use average if to calculate the average score of all homeworks that were handed in on time. Okay, let's see. Equals average if. This is where we have find the criteria. The criteria is not late. And this is the range of values. Perfect. Okay, lookup functions. We already saw the lookup. Now let's have a quick look at index. We use index to look up a value from a grid. Index has 3 inputs. So we specify the grid. We specify the row and the column. Example, this is our grid. And this is the second row, first column. Second row, first column is D. Here's the same grid, but we have the third row and the third column, L. Okay, let's use the index to find the value in the first row and the second column. Row number, column number. Right. Match searches for a specific value in a list and returns its position. It can return have one more at the end, which can be either 1, 0, or -1. 1 will find the closest possible value. 0 only finds the exact value, and if it's not in the list, it returns an error. While -1 finds the closest value which is larger than. If you use 1 or -1, you need to make sure your list is in ascending order. If it's not in or descending order, if not, it's going to return confusing results. So let's do these exercises down here. Use match to find the location of cucumbers. Open brackets, lookup value, we want cucumbers. Cucumbers. This is the array we're looking in, and we want an exact match. Those brackets. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Use match to find the location of exactly 40 in count 1. 40. The first number before 44 in count 1. Okay, find the first number before, so we need less than. We covered basic formulas, absolute and relative, named cells and named ranges, sum, average, min, max, int, if, VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP, date and time functions, extracting numbers from strings, adding cell contents together using the AND sign, index, match, count if, sum if, average if. And we also covered nested functions. Let's have a quick look at those we missed. We missed round and count. So round is just the same as int. That's the number. The only difference is we have the number of digits. It rounds it up or down. If we have more than one digit after the dot, like this, we could specify that we want to round it to the nearest point. You know what I mean. And count, it's an even easier version than count if. It just counts the number of values, 4 in this case. That's actually quite a lot of functions which we covered. And it's all the functions that I mentioned in the curriculum. But I've seen past papers where we need to use functions that are not even mentioned here. Furthermore, if you look at the next curriculum, the one starting in 2025, we have a lot of functions which we didn't talk about, like minif, etc., is error and if error. all sorts of functions. Max A, which we haven't talked about, subtotal. So I'm not going to cover all those functions in this video. You're going to have to do it yourself. The main thing is, though, not to know all the functions by heart. The main thing is to be able to figure them out in the exam. And to do that, you need exam practice. FYI, up here, we've got the formulas tab, and the formula tab lists all functions that you need, and it categorizes them. So all the lookup functions can be found here, etc. I specifically mentioned this is error and if error because I've seen it in a past paper, even though it was not actually mentioned in the syllabus, so that can happen too. So we're safe for now that we've done all functions. Let's have a quick look about test functions and formulas. If something goes wrong with your function, you should be able to do something to figure out what went wrong. And the best way to do that, for me to show you, is to look at a nested function. Here we have a nested function. And one thing we can do is evaluate the formula. We can click on step in and step out to see what's happening each step. And we evaluate this formula step by step by clicking on evaluate. Another thing we can do is we can trace precedence. Here it shows which cells pass information into this function. So this function gets information from cell C31, and cell C31 also is a function which gets information from B31. Furthermore, we can trace, let's remove arrows, trace dependence. So we start on this cell and it shows all the cells that use information. We can also click here and show formulas. That shows all the formulas instead of the results. And that's it for testing functions and formulas. Next, we're going to talk about validation rules. Validation is like protecting sheets. Remember, with protecting sheets, it helps the people who are using our website. It helps them because a lot of them make mistakes by mistake. And by protecting the sheet we have, we're minimizing the opportunity for mistakes to happen. So let's see, we go to data, and under data tools, we can find validation. Or if you forget where it is, you can always go up here and type validation. First of all, we want the B1 not to allow more than 10 characters. We are allowed text length. Oh my goodness. Allow text length less than 10 characters. In case we want to put something in, we can give a message that says, not too long. Please don't enter data more than 10 characters. And then we go to error alert. And then in case there's an error, we can either stop them or just give a warning or just give an information. In the case of stop, they won't have an option but to retry. But in case of warning or information, we'll give them an option to insert invalid data. but I'm going to stick with stop. Hey, pay attention. Okay, let's see. Here's the information. Let's see. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Too long. Retry. A, B, C. It works. Okay. Show help when B1 is selected. I showed you that already. Give a warning. Okay, it says specifically we should give a warning, so let's do that. Instead of doing a stop, we're doing a warning. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Hey, pay attention. Continue? Yes. So I can leave it like that if I want. Okay, age. I want only whole numbers. I'm going to select both of them. Data validation. Yes. Settings. Whole number only. Any whole number. Error message. Oh, okay. Error message. These only numbers. So now if we put like C, these only numbers. Okay. Furthermore, B2 must be between 0 and 99. Which is a bit mean against 100-year-old people, but they will survive. Volunteer for extra work. We only want to allow yes or no. List. We get an error in case we put something other than yes or no. And furthermore, we get a nice drop-down list. If we want a bit of a longer drop-down list, we can do it the same thing. List. And we can select the list from a range of values. And now we can even hide column E to make it look like magic to people who don't know Excel. Now it looks like magic to them. Okay. Test validation rules just means you have to make sure they're working properly. Next, we're moving on to managing data freeze panes. Let's close this one, don't save. Here we have a list, and when we scroll down, we see that the top row disappears. But if we want, we can go like this. View freeze panes. And now when we scroll down, it continues showing us the first row, which is quite handy. We can do the same with columns. In fact, we could just put the freeze over here. Super handy. But let's go back to freezing just the top row. Let's do these exercises. Sort the list in alphabetical order by restaurant. Let's just select the whole table, excluding the header. And we go to data. Oh, where was it? No, it's in home. Sort and filter. Perfect. Or if we want to sort by dish, we can click on this sort button, custom sort, and we can change. So now we've got it by dish. We can sort by restaurant and by price. So we don't need to sort by only one value. Add a level, sort by restaurant, then by price. And now we first have the restaurants, and in each restaurant it's sorted from cheapest to most expensive. Next, let's see. Sort the list of the largest population density to the lowest population density. Sort, custom sort, sort by population density, largest to smallest. There we go. Alphabetical order and then most populous to least populous. So as you can see, oh, by the country, excuse me, not by city name, but by country name. That makes more sense, right? Most popular, most populous to least populous. How many of these cities are in India? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Filter. Let's freeze this. Go back to home. Okay. Filter the list we see because I'm only like, let's say you only like the pizza quattro stagioni. Then we go up here. Go to sort and filter. Filter. This adds a quick filter. Now we can easily go to quattro stagioni and filter it out. It's pretty easy, right? Filter the list only to see Paolo's Pizza. We only have one, right? But if I remove this filter, we have all of Paolo's pizzas. Filter the list for dishes starting with P. For that, let's clear the filter first. And let's go back and we can go to text filter. And here we have begins with P. Yeah, I meant the dishes. I'm supposed to get the dishes. Same thing. All dishes that start with P. All dishes that have an A in it. Let's clear the filter first. contains an A. Filter the list so that we get a list of all pizzas that cost less than 20 euros. Number filters less than 20. Okay, I think the rest will skip them because it's pretty easy, right? Okay. Here is another exercise with the same thing. We're going to skip this one too because it's just more of the same. We've got filter down. We saw all of these. Contains, starts with, ends with. The only thing we didn't talk about is and not. And, or, and not. Let's go back and do those quickly. So let's say we want to see a list of city names. And we want it to start with, we want to list all of those which start with a B and ends with a. We also want to list all letters with all cities which end with A. Oh, that's so weird. Let's edit this filter. I meant it's gonna list all cities that start with a B, and it's gonna list all that starts with A. So the criteria means we have to use an OR. All cities ending in A and all cities starting with B are listed here. If you want an AND, it means both the criteria need to be true for it to be listed. For example, we'll do one starting with M and ending in I. Mumbai. Perfect. Then we also had not, which we needed to talk about. Does not contain and does not equal is also included there. Okay, that covers that, that covers that, that covers that. Now we're going to talk about summarizing and displaying data using pivot tables and pivot charts. Really useful. Look at when we have a huge amount of data. In this case, I have 10,000 approximately data points. And it's almost, and the kind of randomly arranged, it's almost impossible to tell anything useful about this. So what we can do is we can sort them into pivot tables. And here we get an overview. In this case, we've got female members and male members in all of these provinces or all of these districts of these province and this region. And I can update which region, which province I want to look at and which region. So let's say I'm only interested in people from, members from Flanders. We can put in the filter and we see only the Flanders districts. And I can also filter the district. So let's say we only want ons. Oh, we don't have any members in that district. Right. Here we have, let's say we only want to see our information about our male members. And this is the average age. So it's very good at quickly summarizing data. Here we have also a chart. We can see a chart. And we can also filter our chart as well. So how do we insert a pivot table? First of all, it's actually very easy. You just have to select the whole table. I'm going to just hold down Control and Shift, and I use the arrow buttons to select the whole table. Then it's simply a question of insert pivot table. And we're going to put it in a new worksheet. Then we just have to select what's going to be in the filter and what's going to be in the rows and the columns. If you recall, we had the province and the region in the filter, and we had age being calculated. We didn't have the sum of the age, but we had the average age being calculated. We had columns in the we had gender in the columns, and I think it was district in the rows. And there we have it, and it's really that easy. Example B, I will leave it to you to do it yourself. Or you know what? I'll show you example B too. Insert pivot table. What was it? Let's see. Filter the region, marital status in the rows, gender in the columns. And we want minimum, average, and maximum age. So we're going to go here. Instead of sum, we want minimum. And then we're going to pull it in again. And again, instead of sum, we want average. And we're going to pull it in one more time. And instead of average, we want maximum. Here we also have some functions. We can move this function over here if we don't want to summarize it in the horizontal version, but we want to summarize it in the vertical direction. So we have some 0-year-old members and we have some 100-year-old members. But the average age of our members is 46 point something, which is even older than me. Finally, let's make a chart like this one. It's the exact same thing. We just click on Insert, Pivot Chart. And we just drag and drop just like we did before. Let's have age, marital status, the number of people who are married. You can see at a glance that we have much less married members in Flanders than in Wallonia. Okay, one thing that I forgot to mention is In case you ever close that field, we can easily reopen it by right-clicking on the pivot chart. Right-clicking on the pivot chart and going back to field list. Or we can also go to pivot chart options for more options. So let's see. That summarizes pivot tables and pivot charts. Importing and exporting data is very easy. If let's say we want to export this data set, we've already seen that we can print it and we can send it to PDF. Or we also have the export button and we can create the PDF directly. We can also save as, and when we save as, we can change the file type. One common file type is CSV, which stands for comma separated values. We can also save it as text file. And that's really all there is to say about exporting. We can also go here and export it to ODS, binary workbook, etc. It's just another way of doing save as. We can import data easily using from text. And here we have a CSV file that we can import. And we can have a quick look to see if the data makes sense. And if it does, you just click on load. Another way is just to right click and open. If we do this, don't forget this is still open as a CSV file. And if we save it like this, it's going to lose all our formatting and stuff. So we have to go to File, Save As, and make sure we're not saving as a CSV, but we have to make sure we're saving as a XLSX. We can also import data from file, from another workbook, from a PDF, from a database. And that's all there is about importing. Next, let's talk about recording and running macros. In order to record a macro, we first have to save our file as, and we mustn't choose XLSX, but we have to choose a macro-enabled workbook. If we don't do that, our macros won't run when we reload. That's for security reasons. To record a macro, we have to make sure that the developer tab is open, which we can do by going to Home, Options, Home Options, and then Customize Ribbons. Then we have to find the developer tab over here. And if it's not listed here, you will find it under all tabs. Make sure developer is checked. Let's click on OK. Once developer is checked, we can record a macro. I'm going to click on record and start and name my macro. And I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the right 2 times. I'm going to press Control B to bold. And when we're done recording the macro, click on Stop Recording the Macro. Now I'm going to unbold it and we're going to run it. Click on Macros and we have a list of the macros which we've recorded. Let's run it. It emboldens the content in cell C5. What if I choose Use Relative References? So if since I started at cell A1 and I went down 4 and I went to the right 2, we ended up in C1. But when I ran the macro, my cursor was over here and it nevertheless embolded C1. When you use relative, the area which it modifies depends on the starting position of the cursor. So now we have use relative selected. Let's see what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So move 3 to down and 3 to the right. And we're going to type here something like, hey there, macro, put the text here. We're going to stop recording. And now when we run, it's going to depend on where the starting position is. So let's say the starting position of our cursor is here. We go to macros and run. If the starting position is here, macros, run. Pretty good. Incidentally, if we go to macros and we pick one of the macros, we can rename it up here if we like. We can also delete them. And quite interestingly is we can click on edit. And when we click on edit, we see the code which was used to write the macro. If you like writing computer programs, this is actually quite useful because it shows us how it was done. And if you don't like computer programming, then you don't need to worry about it. So we're going to close this. What we also need to do is be able to insert controls. And under the developer tab, we have insert, and we have all sorts of form controls and ActiveX controls. Form controls are like buttons and stuff. So now we inserted a button and there's a macro called button one click. And we're going to click on new. And we can put the code for button one click over here. We could even, if we wanted to, just copy and paste macro text there. Let's see if it works. Load it and let's click on this button. It works. Great. We don't only have to insert buttons, but we can insert option fields and all, and checkboxes and all stuff like that. And if we want to change the buttons, the elements which we already put in, we just right click in the corner. And once we right click in the corner, we can change the text. We can resize. Next, we're going to learn about graphs. Okay, this is the example graph. We're going to recreate this graph using this data. In order to insert a graph, it's very easy. We just select the data, including the data header, insert, And over here we have a whole bunch of graphs. So that's inserting. Now we want to modify it. We have a bunch of elements and you can click on them one by one. Or you can click on the chart as a whole and move the chart as a whole. Let's click on the chart title and set it to population by age Moldova. We also have this legend. It should be at the top. Let's set it to the top. If we see this plus, we see a list of our chart elements, which we can either show or hide. We can click on this arrow to get more information, and then we can click on more options. And when we click on more options, it opens this format axis. Now that I have format access open, I can click on any of these elements and the properties here change. So we're going to click on legend and we're going to put it on the top. Next, we also want a top border and a bottom border. So how do we do that? Border, solid line. Our solid line is blue. It doesn't really make sense to make it blue, so let's make it gray. Okay, what's next? We want axes. We want population and age. In fact, let me just make this a bit smaller so they can more easily see it. In fact, let's click on the plus. Axis titles, horizontal and vertical. We can click on this. Control A, age. And this one should be population in thousands. We also want data labels. Let's decrease this gap width down to 0 of these bars. Okay, next we're going to make this pie chart. Insert. Three-dimensional pie chart. Ensure the chart has a title. Yep. Put that legend at the bottom of the chart. It's already there. Bottom. Make it 3D. We already did that. How about this one? This is a bit of a nicer format. Add data labels. Best fit. Here. Let's go to more options. Sometimes it's a bit hard to find where what we're looking for. So you just have to click a bit through it until you find it. Okay, let's change the format. No. It's more like on the text options, I guess. By the way, over here, we can increase the size. These two are overlapping, so we can change them individually. Oops. We don't want the number, but we want the percentage. Remove the value. I only have one selected here. Let's click away and click on this. And then we'll go to percentage instead of value. Okay, final graph. Insert combo graph. This one. But you can see that we now have two bar charts, which is Tmin and Tmax, and one line chart, which is rain. Here we have it. This is not what we want. We would like to have a line graph, two line graphs, and one bar chart. So let's click here on change chart type. And you can see that down here in combo chart, we can change them to whatever we want, but we do need a combo chart, but we just need a line chart for Tmin and a line chart for Tmax. And also we want a bar chart, a column chart for the rain. Let's put Tmin and Tmax on a secondary axis. No, we keep Tmin and Tmax on the primary axis. We'll put rain on the secondary axis. And the secondary axis shows up on the right-hand side. Okay, what's next? Weather in May. Let's add some axes. Axis titles. This title would be temperature in Celsius. This will be rain in millimeters. This would be day. Let's put this axis on the right-hand side. Let's change the color of the rain. And we don't want it blue, but we want it green. We can also change the border color, no line. I think orange and blue is pretty good. It's similar to how we had it before. how we have it in an example graph. Let's also add data labels. On top. Here we go. Okay, what else do we need? I think that's enough for this chart. Let's go and have a look at the checklist. So we've learned about creating a bar chart, a pie chart, and a line chart. Very easy. Also, a combination chart. A comparative bar chart is simply a bar chart with multiple bars on one line. So, for example, this is a comparative bar chart because it has both male and female. And a comparative line chart is just the same thing with multiple lines. When it comes to formatting, we've done legends, we've done percentages. Segments are just those parts of a pie chart, the different segments of a pie chart. Category axis labels, series labels, value axis labels, scales. We also did secondary axis, extract the pie centers. We did not set the axis scale and axis minimum. But I can quickly show you how to do that. We select this one and it should be here on axis options, minimum and maximum. Yeah, we should have the minimum on 5 and the maximum stays on 25. Oops. We can also change the maximum if we want, or we can put it back on auto like it was before. We can also set the major and minor axes. For example, if I have 10, I only have on one interval. I'll put it back, I'll put it on 5. 5 I think is the right amount in this case. The secondary axis also needs that. No, the secondary axis is fine. So there we have it. Finally, what we need to talk about is what if analysis and goal seek. Let's close this one. Don't save. And I'm going to open modeling. So here we have the Ultimate Widget Company. The Ultimate Widget Company has certain fixed costs, which is rent and salary. And we also have variable costs. So for every widget we make, it's going to cost us £10 on materials and £5 on electricity. And let's say we want to sell each widget for £50. We managed to sell 50 widgets. Our net profit is going to be, according to this formula. Now the question is, what if suddenly our rent increases? Will we still be making a profit? The good thing is we can just put in this 1000 here and we can simulate what would happen. In fact, we would still be making a slight loss, so we would probably have to increase our selling price to maybe $75. But the question is if we'd still be able to sell the same number of widgets, but I digress. Uh, what about if our material costs decrease to £5 per widget? Then we'll be making a bigger profit than before. So one thing we can do to get an overview to run multiple what-if scenarios is we can go to data, and here in forecast we can go what if, and we go to a scenario manager, and we can add scenarios. So the first scenario I'm going to create is I'm going to create a scenario manager that's called what if the rent goes up. And we're going to change the cell B4. And the new rent in our new scenario will be £1,000 instead of £500. And we're going to add another scenario, and it's going to say, what if the materials, what if we get a cheaper supplier? And now we're going to change B8. And instead of materials costing £10, we're going to just it's just going to cost £5 instead. So now we have these two scenarios. We can delete them and we can edit them. And we can also create a summary. Summary can be a scenario summary. The result we're interested in is our net profit, of course. So we put in B18 for our net profit. And as you can see, it creates a table up here. And it gives us a current situation, the scenario that our rent goes up, and the scenario that we get cheaper. We can create the same kind of summary, but we can create a pivot table if we like. Instead, and it gives us a pivot table. Another interesting thing we can do, let's put our materials back on 10 and our rent back to 500, is ask ourselves how many widgets do we need to sell to break even? So in order to do that, we'll talk about a goal seek. We want to change the number of widgets we sell. So that's in B15. No, we want to change how much profit we're making to exactly 0. So that's B18. And we want to set it to value 0. And we want to only change, the only variable we want to change is B15. So let's click on OK. And ta-da, it automatically finds for us how many widgets we need to sell. So basically we need to sell 43 widgets to just barely break even. And that's all about Scenario Manager and Goal Seek. Which brings us to the end of our checklist. It's been a big one. I'm seeking double. I hope you learned something. I hope it was interesting for you. See you in the next video. Bye for now.